We've all heard the stories over and over again about how sedans aren't selling as well as they used to. But interestingly enough, one vehicle format that is selling better than it used to is the compact hatchback. Even though strangely enough, Hyundai and Kia have left this segment, the rest of the entries are seeing increased sales year on year. And that's exactly why Toyota has given us a new trim for the Corolla hatchback for 2021, the new Nightshade edition. As we see in other Nightshade edition vehicles from Toyota, this is not the top-end trim of the Corolla, so there are a few features that you won't find on this particular model because it has the Nightshade package on it, but we do find blacked-out accents all the way around and exactly the same engine options under the hood, so Nightshade doesn't mean extra power. If you're interested in a blacked out look, but you don't want to go through the trouble of doing it yourself, that's where the Nightshade package comes in. We find more black accents around the vehicle, and basically they've deleted all the chrome that was available in the regular Corolla hatch. We have full LED headlight modules, no fog lights below, and this pretty large egg crate style grille. With the loss of the Korean hatchbacks and the American hatchbacks, there aren't too many options to compare the Corolla to. The Mazda 3 is the newest. We're also going to be seeing an all-new Volkswagen Golf very soon in the United States, and of course a new Honda Civic hatchback. Honda has confirmed that the coupe no longer sold in enough volume to keep it around, but the hatchback did, and it will be returning. There's also the Subaru Impreza, if you'd like all-wheel drive, that's also available on the Mazda 3. And if you'd like a hybrid option in this segment, you don't have one, because the Corolla, even though it's available as a hybrid in sedan form, is not available as a hybrid in hatchback form, although you could get a lifted hatchback, the Impreza, with a plug-in hybrid system. At 172 inches long, this is definitely shorter than the Honda Civic hatchback, but this has a much more traditional and practical hatchback layout. One of the big reasons that you might want to consider a hatchback of any description is that generally speaking, they're going to be easier to park than the sedan counterpart, and they're going to have more cargo room in the back. That definitely applies to the Corolla. This is shorter overall than the sedan version of the Corolla, but we have up to 23 cubic feet of storage space right back here behind the hatch. Now, that doesn't necessarily apply to all hatchbacks because the Honda Civic hatch is really a little bit more of a liftback. It's quite a bit longer than this, and you'll really notice that out on the road. There are a few additional options if you'd like a hatchback that's a little bit more crossover styled. Something like the Kia Niro hatchback is obviously in the same size category as this, even though Kia is trying to call it a crossover. Still, front-wheel drive has about the same kind of ground clearance as we find in this one. There's also something like the Nissan Kicks. If you'd rather have a Toyota badge on your lifted hatchback that they're trying to call a crossover, you could always get the CHR. It is not too distantly related to the Toyota Corolla, but I think I like the styling of the Corolla a little bit more. You can see that they've attempted to give us the same sort of X shapes that we find in the front of other modern Toyotas back here. We have a pretty big bumper overhang in the rear, and a really nice touch that we don't find in all of the options in this segment back here are LED taillights. As with the rest of the Corolla lineup, this one has Toyota's TSS 2.0 safety system on it, which means we get radar adaptive cruise control with pedestrian detection, their lane keeping assistance system, and a whole host of other standard safety technologies. The Corolla is a really good value, especially if you compare this to some of the competition that doesn't come with a lot of those active safety systems standard. Every version of this has them on board. There's no need to add an additional option package. In the United States, for the moment, there's just one engine under the hood. Again, no hybrid version of the Corolla hatchback. This is a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine producing 168 horsepower and 151 pound-feet of torque. It's mated to your choice of either a manual transmission or a continuously variable transmission with a twist. This CVT has a physical first gear. In terms of the theory of operation, this is actually somewhat similar to what Nissan does with one of their CVTs and a 2-speed gear set. Adding a physical first gear stretches out the ratio spread, so it allows this transmission to have a more direct, more engaging, and lower first gear, while also having a pretty high final gear ratio for better highway fuel economy. Once first gear is complete and you would normally enter second gear in a traditional transmission, that's where the CVT takes over all the way on up to the final gear ratio. This transmission is also programmed to imitate a 10-speed automatic transmission in select trims of the Corolla. This is one of them. As we see in other vehicles with manual transmissions and optional CVTs, the best fuel economy is in the CVT-equipped model, up to 36 miles per gallon. The lowest fuel economy is with the manual transmission, down at 31. I should apologize now if an accidental Civic crosses through my brain. For some reason, I've been calling this Corolla a Civic all day long. Behind this hatch, the Corolla has less cargo space than we find in some of the competition, just under 18 cubic feet in the version that I'm taking a look at today. Now, for 2021, you have the option of deleting what's going on underneath this cargo floor. Under here, we find a temporary spare tire. If you choose to delete this from the factory, then we get a lower load floor, 23 cubic feet of cargo space, and a can of Fix-A-Flat. The deletion of the spare tire may offend some, but I appreciate the fact that Toyota gives you the option. So if you'd rather have the donut spare tire, That's an option. If you'd rather have the extra storage space, that's also an option. Of course, you could probably delete this yourself, just leave the components at home and lower the floor yourself, and then have that option of having it for a longer road trip if you wanted. Front seat comfort is fairly average for a base compact vehicle, but keep in mind this is not the base trim of the Corolla. We have a manual driver's seat. It's adjustable for height. There's no adjustable lumbar support, but it does adjust for recline. The front passenger seat does not have the same range of motion as the driver's seat. It's missing the height adjustable function, and you can't adjust the seat bottom cushion for tilt. We have a tilt telescopic steering column with a reasonable range of motion, and headroom is pretty reasonable in here. I have about 2 inches of headroom left. This model does not have a moonroof. A common complaint about the Corolla, whether we're talking about the Civic or the hatchback in this generation, is that the rear seats are not as roomy as some folks might like. With this front seat adjusted for me at 6 feet tall, I have about 1.5 inches of legroom left, and I can't move over to the right side of the vehicle when the front seat is all the way back in its tracks. It would be pretty difficult to put a 6-foot-tall person up front and then a rear-facing child seat behind them. Headroom is definitely more generous than in the Corolla, and that would be the Corolla sedan, of course, but the way this ceiling is shaped, it is very dome-shaped, so if I lean my head a little bit too far to the one side, it ends up bopping this handle that pops down from the ceiling right here. The Corolla is certainly squarer than some hatchbacks, but something like the Volkswagen Golf is certainly a little bit more practical for the rear seat passengers. As we look around the interior, keep in mind that the Nightshade version is not the top-end trim, which I actually think is a little bit of a quirk. We still, however, get height-adjustable shoulder belts and height-adjustable headrests. The upholstery is fabric of 2 different types. There's a sort of honeycomb texture there in the middle that mimics the grille on the front, and then the texture that you see over here on the sides. Even though it doesn't look like it, the rest of the seat is upholstered in this fabric. The bolstering isn't too aggressive on the seat bottom and back cushion, so larger drivers shouldn't have any problem with these seats. A reasonable portion of the front doors is made from soft touch materials. The upper section is made from an injection molded plastic that's then been after stitched to dress it up a little bit. We then have a stitched armrest there as well. It's nice and soft. Harder plastics down there at the bottom of the door. The style of the Corolla hatchback is very much like the Corolla sedan, although there are obviously a few differences. The screen is a little bit larger than some of the competitive screens in this segment, and it's a touch screen rather than the relatively silly interface that we see used in the Mazda 3 hatchback. I love the look of the Mazda 3 dashboard, but this is much easier to use in terms of ease of use of the infotainment system. There's some physical buttons on each side, physical knobs below, 2 large air vents, and then you can get either single zone or dual zone automatic climate control in the Corolla hatch. Again, the Nightshade is not the top end trim for some reason, so we get just the single zone climate control. Going down the center console, there's a reasonably sized storage area where you can keep your smartphone, although oddly enough, the USB port for that smartphone interface comes right out of that passenger footwell area. I did find that passengers ended up bumping their knee on there if they're particularly long-legged. Down here we have a pretty standard sized console shifter. There's a sport mode back there, traction control disable button. There's a manual mode over here on this side. Even though this has a CVT, it will imitate a 10-speed automatic transmission. That seems a little bit excessive for a CVT. I'm not the biggest fan of CVTs with imitation gear ratios, I have to be honest. There's an electric parking brake here, auto brake hold button, 2 definitely large cup holders, and then a pretty sizable center console. If you open that up, it's pretty decently sized for a vehicle this small. Depending on the trim level, there are 2 different instrument clusters. This one has the smaller 4-inch color LCD over here on this side. There's also a version with a larger 7-inch display. I think that's my preference, although I like the look of this large analog speedometer in the middle. It definitely has a premium appearance that I didn't expect in the Corolla. I really like the ring around it and the fact that they've bothered to mark out every mile per hour all the way along the speedometer. The steering wheel is one of Toyota's newest designs. It has the controls for the cruise control system on the steering wheel spoke right here, rather than on a separate little stalk that moves with the steering wheel. There are again paddle shifters on the back. We have up on the right side, down on the left. You'll find the buttons for the infotainment system over here on the left side of the wheel, and the buttons for the adaptive cruise control over here on the right. They've divorced some of the infotainment buttons, so track forward, backward, and volume up, down are on separate sides of the wheel, and then this button module controls that small multifunction LCD. As you'd logically expect, the Corolla hatchback is not especially swift. 0 to 60 happens in 7.9 seconds. You'll definitely feel that physical first gear with a very consistent ratio right there. And then it moves on into the CVT where the shifts are, well, like most CVTs that are imitating an automatic transmission. They're a little bit slow, perhaps a little bit mushy, I guess would be the best word to describe them. This transmission can imitate 10-stepped automatic ratios, which seems like an awful lot, especially since the highest ratio available to this transmission is not what is given to you if you actually select 10th gear from these paddle shifters. It's actually a little bit higher, which is unusual. I appreciate the fact that the engineers gave us a way to control the ratios in the CVT, but I still wish they gave us, say, just a way to make it hang out at a particular particular RPM. Say just hang out at 6,000 RPM and vary the ratio behind, hang out at 5,000, 4,000, etc. I think that would be a little bit more useful for going down hills. In my 60 to 0 braking test, it took this vehicle 122 feet to stop from 60 miles an hour back to 0. That's pretty average for a vehicle in this category. As far as handling goes, the level of grip in the Corolla hatchback is relatively average as well, but the suspension tune is definitely good. With this last generation of products, Toyota has really decided to turn over a new leaf and seriously focus on handling ability in all of their vehicles, from the Camry to the Corolla. The dedication to handling and suspension refinement is immediately obvious if you get this out on rougher road surfaces, especially in corners, where the rear suspension of the Corolla does not get nearly as upset as the Mazda 3 hatchback. For cost-saving reasons mainly, Mazda decided to go with a non-independent suspension in the rear of the Mazda 3, and things are different in the majority of the competition. A lot of folks were surprised that the Corolla hatch got a fully independent suspension, and I have to agree that I'm a little bit surprised as well, especially when Mazda thought that they could get away without one in the Mazda 3. But it certainly means that this Corolla has what it would take to be a really good handling partner if you were to put wider, grippier tires in this vehicle, if you really wanted to improve the grip, lower the 60 to 0 stopping distance. Rather unfortunately, it just doesn't have the kind of power that you might expect out of a performance model. Although there are rumors around that Toyota might be bringing us a more powerful vehicle in the future. No one knows exactly what the future holds exactly for Toyota and their performance division, but it is possible that we might be getting higher horsepower engines under this hood at some point in the future. According to Toyota, the demographic that's interested in a Corolla hatchback is a little bit different than the demographic interested in a Corolla sedan. So they've decided to tune this on the firmer side of things. You will certainly notice that if you drive these back to back at a Toyota dealer, the sedan is going to be the softer, more compliant vehicle. This is going to give you a firmer, sportier ride. In many ways, the ride of the Corolla hatchback reminds me an awful lot of the Volkswagen Golf. It has perhaps a Germanic style tune to it, rather than a softer style tune like you found in the previous generation Elantra hatchback, or something like the Chevy Cruze hatchback or Ford Focus hatchbacks back when they existed. The way this Corolla is tuned definitely makes it fun out on smaller winding roads like the one that I'm on here. Now, rather unfortunately, Toyota has not spent too much time working on sound deadening. 73 decibels is what I got in here at 50 miles an hour, making this one of the louder options in this segment. You'll definitely hear some of that engine noise in the cabin as you're accelerating as well, but that's pretty normal in this segment, to be honest. My main complaint is highway noise out on a rougher road surface. This cabin does get pretty loud, and they really could have given us a little bit of additional sound deadening material on the floorboards. Fuel economy is excellent in this model. I've been averaging 36.5 miles per gallon. That's a little bit above what this vehicle supposedly should get according to the EPA. If you don't want a CVT, you have only two options. There's the Volkswagen Golf, and then there's the Mazda 3. But the Mazda 3 has a pretty old 6-speed automatic transmission, and that's one of the reasons that this generation of the Mazda 3 is not as efficient as I really wish it would be. Bottom lining, the Corolla hatch out on the road is pretty easy. This is a fun little hatchback to drive out on your favorite winding road. Obviously, we don't get too much steering feedback from the front tires. We don't find any really in modern hatchbacks of any description. Even the Mazda 3 has only a little bit more feedback from the front tires. But the rear suspension in the Mazda is not as well polished as the one in the Toyota Corolla. And of course, if you're interested in reliability, obviously the Corolla is likely to be the most reliable entry in this segment. Yes, even the one with the CVT. For 2021, the Corolla starts at $20,025, but if you want the hatch, that's about $700 more. The 2-liter 4-cylinder engine and the continuously variable automatic transmission are standard. That is a bit of a differentiation from some of the competition. And you'll notice that Toyota doesn't really have a wide range of options available on the Corolla. They've got a ton of different models in their lineup, and the Corolla and the Corolla hatchback are certainly focused on the lower end of the compact sedan category. That's really obvious when you compare this to some of the newer entries, which can get nearly double the price tag of a base Corolla. Diving into our first competitor, keep in mind that the Civic is going out, and we're going to get a new Civic for 2022. If you haven't already seen my video on that, it will be live by the time you are watching this video, so be sure and check that out. At this moment, I can't talk too much about it, of course, just in case this video goes live before I actually see the new Civic and can report on it. The Civic is going to be 10% more expensive than the Corolla. Definitely keep that in mind. So when you take a look at the Civic, I would say I like it better than the Corolla, But the question I guess you should really be asking is, do you like it 10% better than the Corolla? Because it is going to be more expensive. It does have a turbocharged engine, and I do like the way Honda CVT is tuned a bit more. And of course, we're going to get that new Civic rolling right around the corner. The new Civic is a little bit more expensive than the outgoing model, and it's obvious that Honda is targeting a more premium shopper with this vehicle, both with the previous generation Civic and with the next generation Civic. So even though this generation Civic is sort of a direct competitor to the Corolla, that distance actually grows a bit with the next generation model. I would also say the same thing about the Volkswagen Golf. It starts at $23,195. That's about 15% more expensive, and it comes with a manual transmission. If you want an automatic transmission in your Golf, it's going to be nearly 20% more expensive than a Corolla. I love the way the Golf handles. It's very practical. I like the hatchback look. I happen to like squarer vehicles like this, and I love the German nature of the Golf as well, but keep in mind, it's going to be 15 to 20% more expensive. And if you want the same kind of feature functionality that we find standard on the Corolla, you're going to pay even more than that. Oddly enough, for 2021, we see fewer hatches than we have in the past because Hyundai and Kia have decided to just completely abandon hatches. We'll talk about that in a bit, leaving the next competitor, the Subaru Impreza. The Impreza is a really good deal here. It's $19,295, but that's with the manual transmission. The CVT is going to be $1,300 more. On the other hand, that makes the Impreza hatch almost exactly the same price as the Corolla. We get relatively similar kinds of standard equipment, a little bit more in the Corolla, but the Subaru has all-wheel drive. So simply going by value, the Impreza manages to barely beat out the Corolla in terms of value. Feature content is relatively similar, but there are a few more features you can get in the Impreza. And if you'd like your Impreza with a bit more ground clearance, that's the Crosstrek. Although some would say that the Crosstrek's more direct competitor would be the upcoming Corolla Cross, remember that the Crosstrek really just is an Impreza that's had its ground clearance increased. It's also had a few plastic body panels added, but the rest of the vehicle is exactly the same as the Impreza hatch. Next up, we have the Mazda 3 hatch, which is not lifted at all, but does have available all-wheel drive. The Mazda 3 is certainly stylish. It's not exactly my cup of tea in terms of the overall style. I don't like the rear-end design as much as I like the Mazda 3 sedan. I think the Mazda 3 sedan is gorgeous, and I think the Mazda 3 hatch is just not quite my cup of tea, let's say. It's a little bit more expensive than the Corolla at $22,650, so the price delta is pretty similar to the Civic. And in some ways, it's more of a direct competitor to the Civic, I would say. Some folks might not think that $2,000 to $3,000 is a big difference, but remember that when we're talking about a relatively inexpensive vehicle like this, percentages might be a better way to look at this. Your monthly payment is going to be 10 to 20%, even 30% higher, some of these options compared to the Corolla. And that's why the Corolla still sells pretty well in the US. It's going to be more reliable on average than most of the other entries. It's definitely very fuel efficient. And if it's going to cost 15 to 20% less, it's an easy sale for folks that are simply looking at their pocketbook. On the other hand, the Corolla hatch has a problem, and that is the upcoming bevy of subcompact crossovers, which are about as practical as the average compact hatch. Something like the Chevy Trailblazer undercuts the Corolla in terms of price. It's very similar in terms of fuel economy, and it has a slightly larger interior, so it's a bit more accommodating for your luggage. I also think it feels more modern and just a little bit more interesting than the Corolla hatch. If that's not quite your cup of tea and you want to stay in the Toyota lineup, there's the upcoming Corolla Cross, which is styled like a mini Toyota Highlander. I'm really intrigued by this. It has essentially the same engine and transmission. The tuning is ever so slightly different for the Corolla Cross, but it has available all-wheel drive. So if you thought that you want the practicality of the Corolla hatch, but you want something a bit more modern in style, a little bit more upscale, I guess you'd say, honestly, with the Corolla hatch, then the Corolla Cross is going to be the right option for you, and it has that availability of all-wheel drive. And if you want to spend less, there's something like the Hyundai Venue, which is surprisingly inexpensive for a brand new vehicle in the US. The growth in subcompact crossovers in the US is the reason that I wouldn't necessarily put the Corolla hatchback on my shopping list. I would put the Corolla Cross on my shopping list, honestly, instead. If you haven't seen what that looks like, there's a first look video on the channel right now. I would eagerly await that, especially if you wanted to stay inside the Toyota family. But there are also a lot of great other subcompact crossovers out there. There are so many new small crossovers in the US that the competition is really aggressive, and manufacturers are falling all over themselves to try and make sure that they have a good value proposition. That's why we have the new Chevy Trailblazer with a standard turbo engine, high fuel economy, and an incredibly low sub $20,000 sticker price. And again, even though the Corolla Cross is likely going to be more expensive than the Corolla Hatchback, I would probably be willing to pay a little bit extra to get the increased practicality, the availability of all-wheel drive, and the upgraded style. Let me know what you think about that down there in the comments section below. What would you be shopping for if you were in this segment and you were looking to spend between $20,000 and $24,000, somewhere right in that window? Be sure and find me over at facebook.com/AlexNauto so you can see what I'm driving this week, and I'll see all of you later.